Delighted to say that F1's Managing Director of Motorsports, Ross Brawn, joins us now from his home. Ross, I know you've had a busy old day today on the phone, I should imagine in meetings with regards to the cost cap. Can you give us anything out of those meetings?
This was today's meeting was FIA and Formula 1, and it's I think it's reaching fruition. So I think the details will be going out to the teams in the next few days. There's been a lot of consultation, and I think we're now at the very final stages. So it'll all become clear shortly. Okay.
The take home is obviously that we're trying to get this down to a workable amount for some of the smaller teams, but there has been a little bit of resistance from the top three, in particular Ferrari, as we've discussed in the past. I suppose everybody's trying to work towards the best solution for the whole of F1, though. We keep going on about this word altruism, but people need to be selfless right now, don't they?
Yeah, and it's the budget cap initial objectives were a more competitive field, and I think with the situation we have now, then the sustainability, the economic sustainability of Formula One is the priority. And I think that counts just for the big counts as much for the big teams as it does for the small teams. And it's become very clear from the people who stand above some of the team principals and management of these teams that the message is clear: we've got to cut costs, and therefore there's another big step in the reduction in the cost cap. We started at 175. That was a long battle to get it there. And with the current crisis, we're now going to start at 145. And the discussion really is how much further down we can drive next few years.
Ross, you've obviously been at both sides of this. You've worked at Ferrari, where there's an endless amount of money and budget. Equally, you've been a team principal yourself when you won the World Championship with Brawn. Do you sympathise for the smaller teams that can't get the resource and at this point are struggling even more in the future to compete, especially to get into the races this year and especially next year as well?
Yeah, and I think there's going to be a much more equitable prize fund in the new agreement. So the midfield teams in particular are going to be much better off in terms of their portion of the prize money. So it's being balanced in every direction. We're reducing the amount of money that can be spent in Formula One, and we're improving the distribution of the prize fund more evenly amongst the teams. So a good middle field team should be able to score podiums, maybe a win, and it should make a small profit. And if we can achieve that, then we've got a very sustainable future.
Ross, that's great to hear. The other thing I wanted to ask you about was we've heard about Liberty as a group, recognizing that F1 as a sport and the teams may need a bit of support at this time. They've talked about this fund of 1.4 billion. Could you shed a bit more light on that as to how that might benefit the teams in the short term and perhaps the medium term?
I think it's we'll judge at what level we should support the prize fund in the next 6-12 months, because obviously we want to keep alive. We lose some teams in this period, it'd be a tragedy. So we're working very hard in a fair and equitable way amongst the teams to find. So I think Liberty have shown their strength and created this fighting fund available, and we just need to see how things now develop. All the teams are effectively in lockdown, FIA lockdown, as well as lockdowns, but that's in place until the end of May. We need to look at what the calendar looks like, look at what the income is like for the rest of the season, and then sit down with the teams and see how we can find a way of making sure we all continue on this journey, because the future looks so good. It would be very frustrating by the wayside now. We don't want that. We've got 10 very good teams in Formula One. Keep it that way.
Just to follow up, Paul and I were sitting together in Austin in the room when you announced the regulation changes and all of the changes to do with bringing down the cost in terms of 5 years in the gearbox and stuff like that. And there was a real sense of buoyancy in the room, as you said. I think you were going in the right way. That we believe is now pushed to 22. Certain teams want to go to 23 on that. Any more movement in terms of a decision, in terms of when that new set of regs could come in?
No, there'll definitely be 22. I think some teams have pushed to delay them a further year, but I think there's a justifiable need to carry these cars over into next year because we're in the middle of this terrible, and I think that's completely justified. Initiatives that we're bringing with these new regulations are to make the sport more economically viable in terms of the complexity, where the money is spent, the competitiveness of the amount of money you spend. I mean, with the cars we have now, they're so complex. The more you spend, the quicker you'll go, and we need to level off that slope and create a situation where money is not the only criteria how competitive you'll be. And therefore, I need these new cars to let slope and even that slope out. We still want the great teams to win. We have to maintain the integrity of Formula 1. It's a sport. It still has to have the best people winning. But I think we're a competitive form of racing in the future with these new regulations, with these new cars, and they've been deferred a year, but they're definitely coming in 22.
Okay, we just apologise for the dodgy connection we've got at the moment. We'll just persevere for a couple more minutes with you, Ross, if we could. We would, of course, have just returned from the Dutch Grand Prix, the first Dutch Grand Prix for 35 years. I should imagine it would have been bedecked in orange with all those Max Verstappen fans. A shame we couldn't do that. It's a shame equally that we've not been to any races so far. But just confirming what you're talking about, creating this biosphere. It's not like football matches, as we're saying. They're going neutral venues. They're going to have a lot less people on site. We're going to need about 1,000. How are we just, in layman's terms, going to impose this biosphere that you've put forward?
Well, we're working very closely with the FIA. The FIA doing a great job of putting together the structure we need. And everybody will be tested and will have clearance before they can go into the... And then every 2 days, they'll be tested whilst in the paddock. And that will be with an authorised authority and consistent. Certainly for all European races, we'll be using the same facility to conduct that testing. And we can ensure that everybody has been tested who is in that environment, tested regularly. And then we'll have restriction rates on how people move around within the paddock. So we cannot socially distance with a team. We cannot have stop and socially distance. So we have to create an environment that within itself is effectively a small bubble of isolation, and the teams will stay within their own groups. They won't mingle with other teams, and they'll stay at their own hotels. There's no motorhomes going to be there. Catering facility will make sure that respects all the requirements. And then we're just working with those people who sometimes have to go to all the areas, how that, and what we can do there. So there's a tremendous amount of work going on between ourselves and the FIA. And I'm very encouraged by what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing, that we'll be able to provide a safe environment that we can still form properly and still create talent.
Ross, I guess the team more than anybody to get going. Have you had any feedback from them personally?
From the drivers?
Yes.
Some feedback, yeah. They wrote to us and very positive way, and we're scheduled to meet with them shortly to explain more of the plan, so that get a good insight well before we get there what's going to happen.
Ross, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it. I know how busy you've been. I know how hard you're working to get the show back on the road. So thanks again, and we hope we'll catch up with you soon.